Okay, I'm going to call the regularly scheduled Select Board meeting of December 12th to order. And first is the approval of the agenda.
And I wanted to ask for an addition.
Can we do a motion to approve it?
Oh, sorry, motion to approve?
All right, are there any changes to the agenda? And I know you'd like to add.
Okay.
I know it's a surprise, but I would like to make an addition to add to it a discussion around the train bridges and the articles and the letters that were in the Addison Independent.
Okay, I'd like to add that at 6D. So we get through, some people came and are on the agenda already, and we'll take care of that business and before we go into the budget, if that's okay with everybody.
Sounds good.
Yes.
Point out that we do have reason for an executive session tonight for contracts and personnel still.
Yep.
Okay. Any other amendments? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of the amended agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? The next is approval of the minutes of the November 28th regular Select Board meeting.
I'll move that.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any changes, amendments to the meeting minutes of November 28th?
No, they were good. Thank you.
Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So we have 5 in favor and 2 abstain from being absent. And next is citizen comments. Is there anyone here for something that is not on the Ross? Please.
Good evening. So, as a member of the Middlebury Energy Committee, I'm here this
Can you
evening.
speak a little louder, please? Yeah, good.
As a member of the Middlebury Energy Committee, I'm here this evening to request that the Select Board make time on perhaps a future meeting agenda, hopefully next meeting, to discuss and consider taking part in a net metering solar project to offset and make some of the electricity that the town is currently using renewable to help meet our goals, state goals, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and save money. There's a company called Green Lantern Group. Perhaps you're familiar with them. They've helped us basically installed a number of solar projects throughout the state, going back, they've been doing it for a while now, since 2011 was the first started. And they currently have 5 projects in the works, and they're looking for off-takers, so they have quite a bit of energy to offer. And there's no upfront costs. You save about 10% minimum on your electric costs. It could be potentially 12% if we're looking at something like the wastewater treatment plant that uses a lot of energy. The savings would start in 2018. Most of these projects they've got lined up are coming online this summer, coming up June and July, and that's when the savings would start. The renewable energy credits stay in Vermont, so you can legitimately say that, you know, we're powering the town on renewable solar energy. My understanding is the new law limits customers to 500 kilowatts of net metering off-taking energy, and the town already has some agreements to take some energy, at least 150 kilowatts. So we'd have to look at what the balance is and how much we can additionally add to that, and then maybe look at where it would be most efficient and advantageous to apply that. I would point out also that these investment tax credits for solar net metering are currently due to expire in 2019. No guarantee they'll be renewed, and what we've seen in the past is if they do get renewed, usually it's not as good a deal as it was previously. So I would like to encourage the board to consider taking advantage of this opportunity, because I think, you know, it's not the kind of thing that comes along that often. There's no upfront cost. You don't have to do the siting and the permitting, and it's all kind of taken care of You would just have to agree to buy the electricity for 20 years that you agree to.
Russ, approximate amount of time that you would see on the agenda laying that out for us?
Good question. As a member of the Energy Committee, I'm happy to help facilitate. I could get someone from Green Lantern Group here for your meeting so you can question them directly. Whatever you think would be required to adequately cover the topic and make a good decision, or at least get the process rolling so you can make a good decision.
I think it would
Okay.
be good if we get some materials in writing outlining what a proposal might look like and more fully define it before bring it to the board for discussion.
Well, I actually have copies of contracts that other towns and schools have signed with Green Lantern Group, which is examples of what they would use. I've already sent Kathleen some preliminary information on their projects that they've done and what they're offering. And all that could be available for the next meeting for the discussion or beforehand in your packet.
Certainly, I was planning on including that information in the December 19th packet. I'm just wondering about getting time to, between now and then, to clearly articulate what the deal structure would look like in a concise way.
I could send you copies of the contracts tonight in email for you to pass along.
Russ,
that's
you're
helpful.
looking to do something before the end of the year? Is there any?
It's basically a first come,
imperative
first
For the end of
serve.
the year?
They're offering it, and they're just looking for off-takers, so it's first come, first serve, whoever lines it up, and so, you know, I don't think there's any timeline, but the longer you wait and put it off, the more likely other people will jump on it, and then the opportunity won't be available.
Okay.
I've already approached the schools, because I think they're another, especially with their budget challenges, they could potentially take advantage of this, and I just, you know, it's part of our goal is to move in that direction. So that's why I spoke with their school board meeting last night, told them
Okay.
about it.
Well, I appreciate that. Let's leave it, if you can get the materials to us, and we'll look at, I would, you know, we'll talk about what works best for timing, because we got to get through the budget. These are our budget meetings.
Sure.
And so we'll look and see, we want to make sure that we have an opportunity to digest the materials and then spend enough time on it, so we're asking questions and getting everything that we need to make a decision on that. So if not the 19th, then we would certainly look to get into the next meeting. But, because it's only 19th's a week away, and I don't know if we can queue it up that fast. But
Okay.
we'll, if you get us that material, we'll certainly see if that works.
Okay, and if there's anything else I can do to help facilitate the process, contacting Green Lantern Group to have someone here or whatever you need, just let me know.
Okay, yeah, I think when we do have it on the agenda, it would be appropriate for them to have a representative here so that when we ask questions, it's coming from the group.
Right.
That would be great.
Excellent.
Okay, thanks, Ross.
My
Thank you.
one question, Ross, it was very intriguing until there was the last thing you said about 20 years.
Yep.
That's agreeing. 20 years in the energy development world is a very long time. And ask them what other terms could be available, because I would be reluctant to enter into 20 years because they may be leaders, they may fall behind, I don't know. So I would like to know if there's some other options on that particular element.
Okay, yeah, you can ask them when they're
Well,
here.
yeah.
My understanding is that all their contracts are for that long, because that's to get the net metering agreement approved by the Public Utility Commission. They have to have someone to take the energy they're producing for the period of time that they expect to produce it for. And most solar, it's at least 20 years. There's usually, after that, you can extend it if you wanted to.
Okay, that was my one question.
Yeah, the only real risk is that the town may agree to purchase a certain amount of power and end up being more power than they need, which is why their contracts, my understanding is that they never usually agree to a contract for more than 75 to 85% max of the power you're using, so that there's room for you to do efficiency measures to cut down, make changes if you need to, and so you're not going, you're buying all the power, and then later you find, oh, you don't need that much power, but you're still committed to paying for it.
Thanks.
So that's a significant concern. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now I'd like to go to Addison County Community Trust for a request for town to support an application for Vermont Community Development Program funding. Tim Ash and Mary Jackman are joining us, and I'll let you lay out what you're looking for on the community septic system planning on the Lindale Mobile Home Park.
Sure, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Mary Jackman. I'm the Director of Ownership Programs at Addison County Community Trust. And I'm here this evening. Unfortunately, Elise is headed out to a conference and had her flight out tonight. Tim is doing the grant writing with Elise, so he's here to tell you the proposal.
So I hope you've had a brief chance to look at the letter that we included, and I think it tries to summarize succinctly what the real problem statement is, which is we have a park which is celebrating its 50th anniversary next year, and the individual septic systems that serve the first 48 units of housing have been failing at a pace which is becoming a real problem on an operating basis for ACCT, and even the 19 units that were developed 25 years ago or so are going to start to reach the end of their useful life. So ACCT has been wanting to explore building a community septic system, which is the term to serve all of the units together rather than having every home tied into an individual system. And just to put it in perspective, some of the units, when they've failed, I mean, it requires not just immediate remediation, but it's dealing with conditions which then become unhealthy and unsanitary and briefly blight what is otherwise a very nice community at Lindale. And so I think the sense of need has reached a pivot point, and I'll ask Mary just to say how much they're spending annually on that. I'm not sure how familiar each of you is with the VCDP program. The VCDP program has planning grants, which is what we're seeking your support for, and implementation grants. Implementation grants are when there is a project and you go in seeking sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars. Planning grants are to determine whether there is a project at all, and that is what we are seeking. The funds would be used largely to determine or to hire an engineer to actually design a community septic system, to do cost estimating to determine what that would look like in real dollars for constructing such a system, and then to work on site control issues once the best drainage site is located. In the map that you see here, the best soils are sort of in this area here, which might mean trying to work with one of two adjacent neighbors for site control merely for the septic. And that would obviously require further legal work in terms of lot adjustments and work with the town. The specific requests really are threefold at this time. The first is if you express that you're likely to take the required action at a subsequent meeting, would be to allow Kathleen to authorize us to get into the online application system, which sounds rather bureaucratic, but basically the town helps initiate that process. And then the other two would be formal actions that that this board would take. One is to authorize the submission of an application, and the second is to authorize the holding of the required public hearing. A public hearing always has to be held for VCDP projects. They're not frequently well attended, I will confess, but they are there for anyone to observe the information and weigh in. And then there's a waiting time after that so that any comments that do come in could be reflected in the application itself. So I'm not sure if, Mary, you can just say a word about the frequency of septic failures.
Yeah, so the largest area where we're having the septic failures is on Lindale Circle, which hosts 38 lots with homes on them. Currently, our accountant and I went back through the other day, and just to sort of see the money that we've spent in the last 4 years from 2014 currently, through mainly with Clark Septic, going through and pumping, doing repairs, and of 11 lots that are continually have habitual issues, we've spent over almost $32,000 just on those specific 11 lots. So it's just becoming an issue where not only are we pumping, regularly for the other lots that are in the park, but also those ones that are having the continual issues, or it's just becoming not feasible for the park to be able to handle. In that specific area, the soil has a huge clay base, which isn't allowing the drainage and whatnot for the septic to happen. Right now, things are okay in the other parts of the park, just because, one, they're newer, two, they have a little bit better soil, but we are really looking to put the whole community on a septic so that we can not have to deal with the situation going on down the line when the other ones start to fail.
So with that, we should probably see if you have any questions so that we don't deluge you with.
Questions of the board?
No, it seems like wise planning to do a
Right.
community park project.
Can I ask a question, Catherine? The money request for the town's match, would that be a grant out of those funds, or is it a repayment loan type deal?
I think it's envisioned as a grant.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're talking about using some of the town's revolving loan funding to help meet the match, do you want to talk about what ACCT might have available for terms of match, or are you looking for the whole thing from the town?
Well, the starting problem is we're still building the budget. We see a range here of $20,000 to $30,000, and that will determine how big the match has to be. As we said here, ACCT would be prepared to try and do it on our own with the funds that are sort of scarce. So I don't know the size of the revolving loan fund.
So it's $94,000 right now.
From the point of view of an affordable housing community, if the town could provide the full match, that would be great, but obviously understanding municipal budgets at this time, we're not here to say that we'll be infuriated if that is not met. But that would be, I think, our outward request. It would show the strongest support for those who are scoring the application, because it's a competitive process. So that's really the balancing act.
And Kathleen, would we vote on that portion of the actions tonight or after the public hearing?
I think after the public hearing, Tim could further refine the budget and determine what resources they might have available. And we would know better what the 25% match is.
Right, okay. So what we're looking for tonight is select board support and then a public hearing warning.
One quick question, probably maybe a couple of quick questions. So when is this, do you anticipate this 30,000 or whatever percentage being available?
The work in terms of procuring the services for engineering design could begin, realistically, it would be the VCDP board at which they will make decisions is in mid-February. So really talking about, I'd say May to June realistically is when a contract would be signed with a firm.
Okay, so really obtain the funds, put an RFP out for engineers, and then see what the actual costs are is the sequence here.
Let me, can you restate what?
Well,
restate
the
that?
sequence, obtain the funds on or about February, put the request for proposal out to secure engineering services, find obviously the one who's the most, who meets the qualifications best, and at that point, you would have you'd have a pretty tight idea.
In terms of the application process, what we will be doing is speaking with a few firms to get a general sense of how much we should be budgeting.
Okay.
So when we submit the application, there will not be a chosen vendor for the work.
Right.
If we hear 15,000 is the rough range,
Right.
that's what we'll lock in, and then we'll do some work with the not the general counsel, but the lawyer who ACCT frequently works with about
Okay.
what seems like a realistic allotment. So the actual distribution of funds from any source wouldn't occur until the dollars are actually needed to pay bills.
Okay.
So summer of 2018 would be right about the time when all this work would unfold.
Well, it certainly seems like an honorable and just a cost-effective and logical approach, so commend you for this effort.
Thank you.
Do we need a motion to
I am looking
express
for, I think, a formal motion of support, which would then drive the public hearing.
Can I ask one more question?
Absolutely.
So tonight, we could authorize the allocation of up to 7,500 for the 25% and then change our mind if that monetary amount changed, or should
I
we?
guess we're saying we'll wait until the public hearing.
Wait
Yeah,
for
right.
that complete, I just wasn't sure if you needed that part of it to go forward. That was my concern.
Well, just for clarity, and the VCDP program, which is a sort of, it's the child of a federal program, which helps explain some of the process complexity. What we're seeking tonight is really a more limited first step, which is telling both Kathleen and ACCT that you're likely to support the action so that we can get in and start working on the application itself. It is at the next meeting where we would ask you to make the authorizations for the hearing and the application. And we could easily have the application authorization be subject to public comment and some appreciation for the match issues. Our expectation is that we will be seeking something in the order of $20,000 to $25,000. So the match number that you described would be way beyond the 25% match.
Thank you.
So you're not looking for us to warn the hearing tonight?
Correct.
That would be next Tuesday?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is more of a
So you want us to give you
positive.
access
This is
to
a
the
positive
computer
vibe
system?
session where if we get the indication that
All right.
So, just to streamline things, since we're all here together tonight, why don't we go ahead and warn,
I think
give the
we're-
authorization to warn the public hearing? I think what I'm hearing is the board is comfortable enough with it to go ahead and warn the public hearing and for January 9th. So you have plenty of time in January to complete the application and submit it.
okay.
I think it would save you coming back to us a week
Yeah.
from now, because I think we've answered our questions. We're ready to, we believe it's a worthy project, so we're willing to give the support, and then we might as well warn the hearing, and then you can just work towards that January 9th
Okay,
hearing.
and we'll, it may require the VCDP technical resolution language for the public hearing, so between now and your next meeting, I'll talk with Kathleen about whether that's required, and then you would be merely affirming what you've just expressed.
That could be easily done then.
Okay.
Okay, so why don't we have a motion of support then?
So I'll make a motion to express the Select Board's formal support for ACCT's application to the Vermont Community Development Program seeking up to, it says here 30,000, but you said about 25,000.
Up to 30.
Up to 30, in funding for a planning study for a community septic system at Lindale Mobile Home Park.
Second.
Moving second. Questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay.
And then I'll make a motion to warn a public hearing for Tuesday, January 9th at 7:30 PM to take community testimony on the ACCT grant application.
Second.
Moving second. Questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you
so
very much.
Yes, appreciate your efforts. So the next item is appointment to the Library Board of Trustees. On the November 28th meeting, Barbara Doyle Welch was nominated to fill the current vacancy, the Owsley Library Board of Trustees.
I move that we appoint Barbara.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any questions? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. And since this is an elected position, she will complete it, fill an uncompleted term, and it will expire town meeting day this coming 2018. So, next item of business is nomination to the Planning Commission. And Middlebury residents Todd Desibray and Betty Nuovo have both expressed interest in filling the current vacancy on the Planning Commission. And they're both,
One is,
I see,
Todd is.
Betty's not here, but I see Todd.
Mhm.
Todd, you want to come forward and say anything?
I didn't prepare a speech, so I apologize.
That's fine.
I don't know if I'm supposed to sit or stand or what I'm supposed to do. I'm new to this.
Just right, have a seat there, that'd be great.
Thank you. It was brought to my attention that there could be a seat available with the Planning Commission some time ago. I've taken some time, sat down and attended several of these, and, well, I would appreciate your consideration toward appointing me to that proposed vacant position. Was born in Middlebury, grew up in Salisbury, attended the Middlebury schools, and well, for the last 21 years, I've owned a house in East Middlebury, and along with my family, we run a business here in town too. I think I've met most all of you, if not all of you. And, well, I've come to a point in my life where I'd like to give back to the town. As cliche as that kind of sounds, you know, it's all too many times we have opinions about things and wonder why things are done a certain way and so on and so forth, but never throw our hat into the ring in be involved. And, well, I think it's time, and timing is good for me at this point, where I think I can kind of give back to the community and maybe bring a certain point of view to the board, which is a real diverse board that I've come to notice, and I think it'll be I think I could serve our community well by being on the board.
Thank you, Todd. Are there questions of Todd? Okay. So typically, when we have multiple applicants, we nominate all of the applicants, and then we have our discussion the following meeting when we make our selection. So if we're okay with that, continuing that process, I would seek a motion.
I'll make a motion. Oops, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I would like to make a motion to nominate Todd Desabray and Betty Novo to fill the vacancy on the Planning Commission in accordance with 24 VSA 127 through 308. The nominations would be entered into the official record for this meeting, and the board would decide which candidate to appoint at the board's December 19th special meeting.
Second.
Give it to Farhad.
Oh, man.
Moved and seconded.
Undercutting you constantly.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those,
Recuse myself, I think.
I think that's probably,
Probably is.
Thanks for coming, Todd.
okay.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Next is appointment of Assisting Zoning Administrator. And Planning and Zoning Director Jen Murray is requesting the board's support for appointing David Wetmore to a 3-year term as Assistant Zoning Administrator. Dave joined the Planning and Zoning Office's Assistant Zoning Administrator, DRB Coordinator in October, backfilling the position vacated by Victor earlier this year. As Assistant Zoning Administrator, David will issue permits and zoning opinions in the zoning administrator's absence. And I don't see Dave here, but
But I have met David, and I will move to appoint David as the Assistant Zoning Administrator.
I'll second. Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. We have item 6D, which was an addition to the agenda, the railroad bridges. And Mike,
There we go. I've had a lot of residents come up and talk to me. They saw the editorial in the newspaper by Angelo. They saw the letter from Bruce Highland, and they're just sort of wondering about this alternative plan that keeps getting talked about for the train bridges. And I just want to say what I've been saying to them, that there is no alternative plan. And say it again in public. You know, it's very nice to say, well, you have an alternative plan, but there's no way to pay for it, except for, you know, having it come directly out of the taxpayers' pockets, and there's no draw up of plans that we can look at. So this talk of an alternative plan just kind of bugs me, and I just want to sort of say out loud, the same sort of thing. It reminds me a lot of during the town offices when Alpine Bingham brought the picture that he paid an architect to draw, and it was a great picture and it was lovely, but there really was no plan with it, and I just want to have people understand that the plan that is in place is already supported by the select board, and that's the one that we're working on. And
I agree with you.
so I'm not sure, and I wanted board members a chance to sort of weigh in too, if they wanted to. Sometimes we spend all this time talking about things not as a board, but out in the community, and so to sort of reinforce with each other of, yes, we are still on the same path and the same thinking, and everything else is sort of nice to be able to take a few minutes and do that and say, yes, this is where we are. So.
It is, yes. And, alternative plans have already been evaluated. To get to this point, this is the one that meets the objective and the needs of the town for a long time. And that any further delay, they're ready to start the work in the spring and get this first phase underway so that we can get this job done and we can have a nice town center. And the majority of people I come across are ready just to be done with this project, so they want it underway and done. And so anything else that could potentially delay this is harmful. And so, well put, Susan. Let's move forward with this project.
I would just like to say that I'm glad that you raised it, and I can see how it looks very reasonable, and that I too have been asked by residents to consider that because it seems very reasonable. Mm-hmm. And I do appreciate the scrutiny that that is brought to studying all the details, and I appreciate the concern about the environmental impacts on water and that we are paying attention to that. And I don't see that we can get around the height requirements that we have for this bridge, and so I feel satisfied that we have a plan that works for the height that we have to meet for this, and we can look forward to the benefits of rail being here, from passenger to safer freight, all of that. So I want to see us proceed.
I was rather disheartened by the editorial talking about stopping and reconsidering, because I think Susan correctly says there is no alternate plan. I think it's sheer sophistry to say there is one. There are others who have an idea about how it might be done differently, but that's not a plan. And it certainly is not a plan that's been publicly scrutinized. So I think this is, I think the state is doing due diligence, and I think it's important not to delay this project any more than it has been. There are going to be some difficult moments in the course of it, but the sooner we know we're going to get there, I think the better it will be for the town and the long-term interests. I appreciate the public spiritedness of some of these citizens, but I think their minds are a bit clouded on this issue.
I also think whether it's stated directly or implied that the people who have been working hard on this project, both in terms of design and preparing for the construction, may not be of the highest caliber. And I couldn't think of anything further from the truth. This is a tremendous group. I have great admiration for Wayne Simmons and the V-Trans team. They are the A-team. VHB has put, very good people out there. And as we saw even this past summer when the temporary bridges were put in with Kubricki, they're very they're pros, and they know how to do this work. So I also have great confidence that what we saw as a first phase with the temporaries is going to go extremely well to get this complete in the time that they allocated, and have something that we're proud of at the end.
I just want to say something again about this height, because that keeps coming up in the letters, that we can negotiate with Vermont Rail on the height, or the state or the federal government, and we can't, negotiate on that. And I can see that they see that we're not going to use the rail that way, that's going to make use of that height, but we can't negotiate on that. And I see that as a kind of a fixed point. I know that we wish we could, but we can't, so we're just going to have to go from here. Shelburne just lost a major lawsuit, going up against Vermont Rail, so they have a lot of say. So I think that we have to just live with that reality.
Well, we'll give you an update too next week, because Jim and I are going to have a brief telephone conversation tomorrow with the chair of both the House and Senate Transportation Committees. And then tomorrow's Wednesday and then Thursday, we're meeting with the Secretary and Wayne, and we just want to verify that for the board that, we've been told over and over 21 feet is 21 feet, and we want to make sure that that's the case. And if 21 feet is the end-all be-all, then we need to move this project forward and get it done so that the town can get behind it, get it behind them, and stabilize. And we've done, I think, a very good job of mitigating risks to the downtown. We continue to work that issue. Jim's working that on a daily basis to put together plans, working with the businesses downtown as far as activities and marketing that can drive business and bring people into the downtown. And so I just don't see, I think if we can spend our time more constructively to ensure that we get through the process versus fighting the process, maybe it'll be behind us and it'll be done. If there's nothing more on that topic, I appreciate you bringing it up. It certainly is a question for everybody. And, I think we've done our due diligence.
Yeah.
We will continue to do that. Now we're going to dive into the budget. And as part of our review, each year we have a certain number of nonprofits and health agencies and come and do, are we doing that every other year or?
No, every year.
Every year.
Every year.
Every year, they rotate.
3 different ones each
Yeah,
year.
they all rotate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, but it's
Oh, yeah, we rotate. It's like a 5-year schedule.
5-year schedule, yeah. So, I was gonna say, I'm not seeing the same ones every year, but on a 5-year schedule. So, this year, we're reviewing Hospice Volunteer Services, Age Well, Addison County Parent-Child Center, and Women's Safe. And so, we'll start with Hospice Volunteer Services. I think Joanna Nichols is here, and Dorothea Langevin. And they're requesting $2,000, which is the same as last year.
Actually, the same, I think, for about 8 years.
Okay.
So thank you very much for this opportunity. We are about to celebrate our 35th anniversary of serving Middlebury residents with end-of-life care. And we're very excited to be looking at some events to do that. So there are just want to say that we're kind of like a 3-legged stool. If you think about hospice volunteers who are with people at the end of life and their families to support them. Bereavement services, so after the death and loss of a loved one, bereavement services for the families. And then also community education. And that's community education about end-of-life services. Also helping people with advanced directives, helping people to feel comfortable with hospice services, feel comfortable with bereavement services. And that is certainly growing very rapidly. I think part of it is because we partner with there are 5 different organizations in Addison County that are partnering, and we call ourselves Living with Dying Addison County Partnership. So it's Porter Medical, Helen Porter, Arch, which is the respite care home, Hospice Volunteer Services, and Home Health and Hospice. And we've been doing community events like the Being Mortal Project, just reaching out to people in the community. I do want to say that there's confusion sometimes between Hospice Volunteer Services and Home Health and Hospice. And one of the ways to think about it is we're a team. Home Health and Hospice provides the nursing care. Hospice Volunteer Services provides the volunteer support. So that's, and we do have a contract with Home Health and Hospice because we are part of the, for them to bill Medicare, they need to have a federally mandated volunteer component in their hospice program in order for them to bill Medicare. So we provide that service. I want to give time over to Dorothea Langevin, who's on our board, who can talk to you about how she became connected with Hospice Volunteer Services. We're both hospice volunteers. We've been through the training that's provided, 30 hours of training to people who go into volunteering for hospice. And so Dorothea.
Yes. Good evening. I'm Dorothea Langevin. I'm a Middlebury resident. My husband passed away last spring after a long illness. The last week of his life, he needed care beyond what I could offer, and we were able to line up hospice just in time. It felt like the cavalry arrived in time to bail us out when I ran out of gas. It's a mix between professional nurses and volunteers coming to pick you up and embrace you. My husband's biggest fear was to die in a hospital, removed from family and familiar surroundings, and hospice allowed us to give him his wish of dying at home, surrounded by family and finding peace. I went through the volunteer training last fall. Had always been interested in it, but certainly had a boost in interest, and have been volunteering actively ever since. I've sat with many patients since last fall, actively dying or not actively dying in all settings, from home to hospital to nursing home to retirement communities we have in Middlebury. So it was really interesting to watch and notice we all need this. Nobody wants to die alone. And the professional services are doing an extreme wonderful job, and the volunteers are filling the gap. The families only have so much gas, and you don't know how long your marathon might be. So I appreciate the support, and my goal is to pass that on and assist other families to help their loved ones fulfill their last wishes. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of them?
No, thank you for the admirable work.
Yeah, the one thing, I've had an opportunity to be around hospice here in the Middlebury area, and also in another Vermont community that has a more difficult time getting volunteers and didn't have the same level of support that hospice in our community is able to give, and what a difference. And thank you for everything you do. I really appreciate it. Thank you. The next is Age Well, formerly Champlain Valley Agency on Aging, and Jason Farrell.
Yes.
Hi, Jason. Director of Human Resources. They're requesting $3,000, which was the same as last year and maybe 8 years ago. I'm not sure.
I imagine so, yes, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Age Well has been serving Grand Isle, Franklin, Chittenden, and Addison counties since 1974. We were formerly known, as you said, as Champlain Valley Agency on Aging, and about a little over a year ago, changed our name, doing business as Age Well. And we have a mission that is to really provide the care and service to the community that inspires people to age with confidence, to have people remain in their homes, to provide some assistance for them to be able to live independently and as healthily as they can and as they choose to throughout their aging years. So we serve clienteles in Middlebury, residents of Middlebury. Last year we served 271 Middlebury residents. We provide a fleet of services as well. We actually have an information hotline where people help provide information about community resources, where we help connect them with state and federal and other community resources. We provide Meals on Wheels in Addison County. Which today we had people out on the roads. We had volunteers delivering hot meals. We had staff members filling in for volunteers who couldn't do that. And I've driven this route a few times, and we have volunteers on a daily basis picking up meals here in Middlebury and going as far as Shoreham, Orwell, south, and then in Franklin County we have people going all the way to Franklin, so the Canadian border. So we have a very large sort of geographical area, and we also have the state's largest population for area agencies on aging. We are one of 5 area agencies on aging, and I'm open to answering any of your questions.
Are there any questions? I'm just curious why you renamed.
That's a good question. So it happened as I was coming on, and I could say that as someone applying to Champlain Valley Agency on Aging, I was less aware of the entire organization mission. I think a lot of people confused the fact that the word agency was within the title of it with a government program, and we are not. We're an independent nonprofit, and we really, I think as an organization, think of aging differently than it was 43 years ago. We have, the largest population growth in the state of Vermont is in the 60 or more or older category, and I think that people who are in that age group think of aging differently than they did even 10 years ago about what that means and how they're going to age well and how they're going to continue to grow in their third phase, whether that means coming to us as volunteers. We have a robust volunteer department where we have about 1,000 volunteers that couple with our care and service coordinators, provide Meals on Wheels, run Tai Chi programs, do community meals. I actually saw here in Middlebury, my great uncle and his wife showed up at a community program. I said, "How did you get here?" He said, "I'm 98, I drove." It's pretty amazing, the people we serve, and the way that they think about what aging means. And so Champlain Valley Agency on Aging didn't really tell, I think, adequately the story of who we are.
Neat.
That was a good question. I like Age Well. It's positive.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for your support. We couldn't do this without your help.
Okay, thank you, James. Next is Donna Bailey from the Parent-Child Center, and they're requesting $10,000, the same as last year. And Mrs. Peters?
And I brought some to show you from G. That's our annual report from last year. This is your form, Andrew.
Okay.
And this is the information I wanted to share today. Thanks for having us.
You're welcome.
You all know Natalie. She's been on our board since we started, right? Since 1980.
I'm
not 98 yet, though.
Yeah. So she drove too.
You're aging well, right?
Getting there.
And you've been with the Parent-Child Center for a long time, Donna.
Yes, since 1998.
Yeah.
So thank you for having us. We did come some years ago, I don't remember what year, quite frankly, to ask for an increase to $10,000 after being at 5 for many, many years. Thank you for that and being supportive of that. So we wanted to share some information, and you'll have this now too, which shows, what we're known for. I think what you should know too, that we served 411 Middlebury residents. Some of them are the most vulnerable and the youngest. So we have infant care. We actually have the most infant care slots in the county. And so we have 40 infant and toddler spots, and 25 of them are infants only. And there are only 43 infant spots in center-based care in the entire county, which is really alarming. And we are in a dire need for more childcare. But we are trying to do our best, and we're also, again, serving the most vulnerable, and we're serving parents. And now we also serve many grandparents in a multi-generational way to support young families become self-sufficient and self-reliant. So some of our work is very short and sweet, welcoming new babies, and some is 40 hours of therapeutic care. So we also have an in-house program called Learning Together. That's our intensive program that teaches parenting and job readiness skills. So and a part of that is an alternative education program that supports the work of all 3 of the in-county high schools, where parents can get their actual diplomas from those high schools, as well as Otter Valley. We do work with Otter Valley students. So we, in addition, have a residence since 2006 on Elm Street, which was the boarding house. So that's a 10-unit, 9 single rooms and 1 one-bedroom for first-time renters. So for young, some parents, some not parents, moms and dads, young children, and we knew you'd want us to have some support, so we have a house parent that lives there. But our programming is done back at 126 Monroe Street. We do pay property tax on the 18 Elm Street because it's residential and we use the town services. So
I was interested to read about that. How long are they allowed to stay there?
the typical stay is 1 year. So they receive a lease, and if they are a tenant in good standing at the end of the year, and I'm a landlord and we have weekly meetings, they have a requirement of doing something for 20 hours per week, whether that's job or education and training. And they have to pay rent on time and build those skills. And if they leave, they can, I'm assuming the Housing Authority and the federal government supporting vouchers at the time, they're able to then move on to affordable housing with a voucher. So it's a great thing to be able to teach skills to young people so that they aren't in a lifetime of homelessness. If they haven't had that and gotten that from their own family, I think it's really important that we prevent long-term homelessness and needs for housing. So it's been a great program, and I have friends that live across the street, and I don't get complaints, so that's good. And I think, again, I think we work really hard to make sure that young people are getting the best skills and work as much in prevention as we can. I did want to draw your attention too, because if I were you, I'd be asking why is your income higher than your operating expenses? So on the sheet that we have, I just want to explain that we were lucky enough to receive a federal grant through Early Head Start, so we had to put that on our books. It's not part of our operating expenses. It was spent out, and we have renovated our childcare space. We have and we use local contractors and businesses to do that work. So we were able to get some energy efficiency, radiant floor heating, and spruce up the building that was built in the 80s.
Questions?
I'm gonna add a general comment. I've been around a long time. And I think that one of the nicest things about the organizations that have come to you for money is that they are the leaders in the state. They are examples in the state. This is true of the Parent-Child Center and has been. And there are Parent-Child Centers now in the entire state as a result of the work of this one. And the work they do has also changed over the years. Today, we only have, or we generally have under 5 teenage parents. The parents are in their 20s now, and often they have problem handicapped or other difficulties with the children, and the learning is difficult for the children, and the parents need to learn how to be parents for that. And this program works with those people also. I think that's a change that maybe you're not aware of, and it's a good one. And the work they do has made a big difference. So I'd say that parenting is one of the main occupations, but working with the young people to complete their education, replace skills that they haven't learned at home is incredibly well done. So it's an organization you can be proud of, and the $10,000 that you put into it could easily be doubled or tripled, and you'd get more than your money's worth if you'd like to do that. And that's probably true of some of these other organizations. My experience in this town is that the Elderly Services, the Mary Johnson Children's Center, they're models in the state. They are looked up to all over the state. And that is a testament to the work that's done here, the people that are on the staffs and the programs that are developed, and to your support of them, because that's not a minor thing. It's important, and it should be lauded, and you should know that. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Okay, next is to review the Library Board of Trustees.
No,
One more.
hey.
Oh, I'm sorry. I scrolled too fast. We have Carrie Duquette Hoffman, Executive Director of Women's Safe here.
I'm passing out a draft annual report. I will just point out that when we filled out the application for funding, as we noted, it was before our audit was finalized, so the numbers are slightly different in the audit, in that annual report. Women's Safe is the agency in Addison County and Rochester, Vermont, that works to address and end domestic and sexual violence. We work across the gender spectrum. Anyone who needs our services is more than welcome to call or come in. We work in 2 main modalities. One is doing prevention in schools, in workshops, in meeting groups. If you are interested in learning more about how to end domestic and sexual violence, have safe relationships, and healthy sexuality, we are really interested in talking to you. We also have a great deal of direct service that we do, including supervised visitation programming, which assists parents who were court-ordered to have supervised monitors. It assists them in maintaining safe and healthy contact with their kids. We have a 24-hour hotline, which is what people are most often familiar with. If any of you have been, or anyone listening has been impacted by the Me Too movement, please call. We're here 24 hours a day to talk and to brainstorm and to come up with resources and build hope. Our approach to the work is to say, what are your dreams, and let's figure out how to get there. And we get to see a lot of really inspiring things in our community. We have a pretty amazing group of folks here. We also have a 24-hour, we also have transitional housing that right now is variable site, which means it's a federal grant that we contract with different landlords with. You probably have heard that we're working to build 2 units of our own transitional housing that won't be dependent upon that federal grant as well. Specifically in Middlebury, we served 135 survivors last year, 281 students in the schools. We do a 6-week prevention education course, kind of depending on the age group. We meet the students' needs and the classroom setting that they're in. We also worked with 261 adults doing prevention work. We provide backup to MidSafe, which is the Middlebury College Advocacy Program, and training and support for their services as well. And we write and administer federal grants that fund a position at the state's attorney's office, a prosecutor who's full-time, a half-time advocate, and a half-time investigator that works both. The other half of his time is at a koozie. And we also fund partnerships with Domestic Violence to Responsible Choices, CSAC, John Graham Shelter, Pride Center of Vermont, and the koozie. We do all this because we think that every member of our community deserves to be safe, and our community's healthier when we all can contribute. Any other questions?
Any questions?
No, I would just say that if Chief Hanley were here, he would be saying that the reason we do have the safety in our community that we have is because of the quality social service agencies that Natalie spoke of, that they are models, and this is another model. So we appreciate that, it has a ripple effect. Certainly, early education has an important ripple effect, so we appreciate the services.
Thanks.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Now I will scroll to the Library Board of Trustees with your FY19 budget request.
Actually, are getting the interim
getting the-
co-directors.
Yes.
Okay. I saw John in the back, and I thought maybe he was coming to do it.
Heather had a clarifying.
So there were other agency requests. Do we get any opportunity
To respond to them.
to talk about those, or should we talk?
Which one are you talking about?
So in particular, I was curious on the teen center request. If
We're planning on having the teen center come in
okay.
once we've had an opportunity to meet with them and flush out what the details of a cooperative venture between the town and the teen center would work.
Specifically, if you want to prep them, I'm curious what increases they're requesting from other towns.
Good point.
So this starts on line number 341 of your handout of the general fund budget.
Who starts?
What can we do for
We
you?
could,
Ready?
So we have Chris Kirby and Tricia Allen, co-directors, acting co-directors of the Ilsley Library.
So if you'd like, we could walk you through a few of the changes in the budget from last year, So the Ilsley Library's budget for FY19 shows an increase in the regular full-time budget, 342, as well as modest increases in digital services and platforms. The regular full-time FY19 budget reflects two changes from FY18, plus COLA and step increases. The first increase in the
First change.
the first change is we had so in line 342, we had a reduction because of the salary of our new director is lower than the salary of our former director. And there's also the second change is that we have an increase, there was an increase in that line because we had one current full-time staff member who had been mistakenly paid out of regular part-time budget in previous years. FY19 corrects this oversight and we've subtracted that regular full-time employees' pay from the part-time, and we've added it to full-time. And that is why the 342 shows an overall increase of 15%. So we go from 294, 209, we were currently 294,000 in FY19, whereas in FY18 we were at 255,730. However, adjusting for the pay oversight, which was that mistakenly placing the full-time employee in the part-time budget, and correcting for that, it would only be a 2.8% increase over last year. So it's not as big as it appears. That's one of the major changes in this budget.
Can I ask a question on the payroll then?
Yes.
So if we've moved a full-time pay out of the part-time and into the full-time, how come the part-time didn't drop more than 4,300?
Excellent question. That's we're in our part-time budget, we have also budgeted $12,500, an additional $12,500. And this is, the Board of Trustees has estimated, expects that our new director will be devoting a percentage of her time to the building project and fundraising. And we are asking, the library and the trustees are asking for an additional $12,500 in this part-time line in order that we can shift a fraction of those directors' regular responsibilities over to other staff members so that we can continue to operate as usual and the new director can assume some of those new responsibilities.
I'll wait for the rest of the board. I mean, we'll go through the rest of it. Typically, if we're going to add staffing, we would bring that through the Personnel Committee with proposed changes in duties as assigned and kind of look at that, make a recommendation up through to the Selectboard.
I think the concern was that because this is the FY19 budget, which will begin in July, we didn't want to be caught short on funds when the work does need to begin in the interim. So that was the thought process between putting it into this FY19 budget, is that we didn't want to be caught short on funds to make sure that we can do all the work we need to do.
I understand your rationale. Just
Yeah.
just know what our traditional methodology has been. So.
Yeah.
I
Any
mean,
Any
that's
other
what I was
questions on
gonna
that?
say, that's what I was gonna say too.
Well, I think they're gonna.
Okay.
Yeah, so, okay.
Yeah.
Because I was gonna say, sort of approving the budget is then approving the position before you approving the position, so let's go for it.
Okay.
Any other questions, or is there?
Well, it looks like, and then the other major changes were in the digital market,
Mm-hmm.
in the increase in digital subscriptions and stuff, right? Downloadables.
Yeah.
Some books and materials.
There were a couple of
A lot
factors
to
that went
tech.
into those
Mhm.
those sort of lines. One is that digital platform costs had not been specifically worked into our budget in past years. They were kind of piecemeal paid out of different line items. which meant that when those bills came due, while Chris and I were co-interim directors, it was an interesting process to try and figure out where they were supposed to be paid from. So we're trying to streamline it and condense them into the budget lines where they are supposed to be paid out of. So a lot of the increases we're looking at what things cost last year, how they were paid and how they should have been paid. So part of it is reallocating and moving things to budget lines where it makes sense to pay our different digital platforms, digital resources. Part of it is also an increase because our digital resources continue to see a great deal of growth. Our demand for digital resources has gone up considerably over the past year. Did you look up?
Yes, so within the last year, in the last 9 years, the per month circulation of downloadable ebooks and audiobooks has been, we've had record circulations each month has our last 12 months are the highest circulating months for us in the past 8 years. So we have increasing demand for these materials. They are, and so we're trying to meet that demand. We have limited shelving space is another, especially in the children's area. And digital materials provides a terrific way of continuing to provide resources for our users in light of shelving and space limitations. For every book that Tricia adds to the collection, I think you have to take one out, I think, typically. So by directing more of our budget to our digital resources, we help, we meet our users' needs and do so without impacting our space. We are also among the highest circulating for digital materials in the state, too. So we're in the top 2 to 3 each month in terms of Middlebury users use it very heavily.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
So if it's offsetting print materials, are digital materials just more expensive, and that's what we're seeing in the budget? So that's...
They tend to be more expensive. They do. However, we don't have the same costs in terms of lost materials for digital materials that we do for
Replacement costs.
Yeah, replacement costs. If we don't have them walking out the door and unaccounted for, we don't have lost and damaged materials. We don't have, and also. The technical services, adding them to the collection is not something that we have to deal with. But the materials themselves are more expensive than a traditional print material. It's just the model.
Okay, that's helpful to understand. And I understand that it gives you some space benefits, and that and some of their cost is offset by not having to pay for replacement fees that you did with print materials, but it's still not offsetting it completely. So we're looking at about a $40,000 increase in the total library budget. So we're just like kind of, ooh. You know,
Right.
we know that the library is wonderful. It's heavily used. It's one of our most used buildings, you know, so I'm sure we're going to be weighing that against the rest of the budget, because we know that our residents want us to keep our property taxes reasonable. So that's going to be a challenge.
Right, and we realize we're putting this on you at the last minute to some extent. We hope you understand that we've been operating without a full staff, and Tricia and I have been filling in as co-interim directors. But we also want to set the new director off on a good footing, and make sure that she has the resources available to have a good start, and that's the justification for the increase in the part-time regular budget that we were asking for.
Can I ask a
Yes.
question? So on line 360, there's no actual for service contract copier for fiscal year 17. There's nothing for fiscal year 18. Yes, yet there's a proposed increase of $1,940. Could you explain that a little bit,
Which one
please?
was that?
Which line?
Line 360.
360. It was budgeted, but
60,
not,
did you say?
there was no actual.
360.
Oh,
There's no,
Yes,
So-
we had an issue with the last year, let's see,
service contract copier.
360.
yeah, 360.
Our lines are a little different, but yes.
Yeah, you're showing it as zeroed out in,
We had 360
we
for
did,
past budget
we
years.
had budgeted 3,600 for it. I think last year, in fact, it may have been, we share a copier service with the town and with the other town offices, and it should have been, we have in our budget 3,600. It may not have been deducted from our budget.
Okay, so it was an allocation issue in
Allocation
bookkeeping.
issue, yeah.
Okay, so I can follow up on that.
Okay,
Right.
yes. I think we found that the cost has increased from last year, however.
And that- we got this
So
number
that-
from the town.
We got that number from Jackie Sullivan gave us that, so.
so it's a contract that's shared between like here and there?
I think most of our town copiers and all of our facilities are under one contract.
Oh, okay,
And that's our portion.
Yeah,
okay.
And that's their
And so
allocated
the
portion.
reason there's no cost from prior years is it's just never been split and allocated out of, okay.
Yeah, wait till you see Chief Hanley's actual expenses. It's probably
Yeah,
double.
there was just nothing there, so I.
Yeah.
it-
Yeah.
it's a
Yes.
good
Question.
A
Yeah.
good question.
No,
Yeah.
it's good catch.
yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. Since you're new to this, our process is we go through all of this, we ask all of our questions, and then, so we're not really making decisions tonight. We're-
Okay.
We're trying to
We're
do a lot of
absorbing.
fact-finding, and then after we have the
Mhm.
budget as a whole, we have to start doing some prioritization. And then we may come back to you either with more questions or requests to change your budget or something. So that's kind of how we've been going about it. I think it works pretty good. So we really appreciate you grappling with this for the first time.
Yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you very much for your support.
Yeah, sure. Could turn up the heat, too.
So Kathleen,
Right. So we'll go back up to page 4, I think, page 5, and talk about the general fund expenses. Briefly. So the general fund administrative expenses include the select board office, town manager's office, planning and zoning, assessing, town clerk, town treasurer, and accounting. So starting right off at the administration and the select board, as you know, we have had the benefits of having Beth Dow in the town manager's office doing our minutes here at the select board. So we're reducing the regular part-time by $2,500 to $1,000, which is provide some substitute funding if needed. In the town manager's office, under line 197, other services and charges, I'm reducing that by $2,000. This year, we had done some performance management and personnel evaluation work, and we're working on that now. Next year, under that line item, we're thinking about the powerhouse needing further evaluation for site remediation if needed. That's just a place marker right now. We're waiting for some response from the state to see if that is needed. And then conference and registration, I increased by $1,000, consistent with the board's directive there. Planning and zoning, stable, no change there. Energy committee, no change. Down under 236, the local and agency funding. I will, at the next meeting, provide an analysis of what the town is doing on the economic development front for the Better Middlebury Partnership funding, the Addison County Economic Development Corporation, and present that as a package to you. As Heather noted, the Addison County teens have requested an increase of $5,000, and I will ask them about what they're doing for other towns. We have a meeting with the Addison County teens. I'm talking about Bill Kernan and me and I, have a meeting with the Addison County teens on Thursday. And then there's also an increase under MALT special projects, line 246. That is for the railroad crossing at the Boathouse Bridge to be funded over a 3-year period. This would be our second year. Accounting services, we have some significant increases in different line items here, just reflecting the trends and actual costs that we're experiencing in those line items. Municipal buildings, line 284. There are some changes here. Back when the...
I'm sorry, where are you?
284.
Next page.
Back in FY17, when the new buildings, the recreation center and town offices came online, I had carried forward our old methodology of budgeting for both buildings under municipal buildings. This year, I'm going to work on breaking that out, and you see under that $10,500 reduction, that's going to the recreation budget. I'm also going to be looking to break out the electricity on line 290, so about half of that will be going to the recreation budget also.
Is that, and it is kind of shaken out that way.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Half and half, yeah.
So then under equipment repair services, since we have 2 new buildings, we have lower equipment repair services. So reduce that by 2,000. And then under rubbish removal, we are consolidating all of our solid waste from both the town offices and the recreation facility to the Public Works Department. So that dumpster is getting all of the materials here. We do have a need from time to time for solid waste disposal. So that's the $1,000 remaining.
Wait, so how does that work? The rubbish? It's consolidated where?
Our staff takes it down to the Public Works Department.
Oh, okay.
To have it carried away, as you know, we don't have a place for a dumpster here.
Right.
Okay.
And before, it was just picked up by
We
haulers?
had, at
Separate?
the old municipal building, we had a dumpster
Uh-huh.
right there.
Okay.
Annual audit increased $8,900 to reflect the trend, the actual cost there.
Question on that. Why do you think the cost is higher? I thought we had a contract with them, or is it a per hour contract?
For basic services, there have been some additional services needed to bring us up to date. So we're hoping that it's going to be less than the actual in FY 16. And we're on track for that for this year. It's going to be closer to the $25,000 range. There are some other services that we need to contact all of our attorneys, and they need to give us opinions on what our legal prospects are if we have any pending litigation. So those are also items that we have to pay for under the audit expense. Under website and e-newsletter, since the board has been using the SurveyMonkey instrument, I added that to this line item. It's about $350 a year, so I bumped that up a little bit to cover that, should you want to go forward surveying.
We love surveys.
I think everyone loves
Yeah,
a
I
good
think there
survey.
should be an I in that one there, Laura.
I love a good survey.
As we had discussed back on the 28th, elections going up $6,000 to cover the upcoming election cycle. And as noted in your packet, under assessing, although there's not a lot of change there in the budget line items, we are looking at what the staffing of the assessing office will be going forward, as Bill Benton has indicated that this is his last year of providing assessing services to the town. And that is it for the administration budget. I also am going to go over the debt service budget, which is down on page 23. Line items 1031 to
What item
1044.
is that again?
1031, page 23. And what you see here is just a reduction as the bonds age and get paid off. We're paying lower interest on them. So we're looking at a reduction of $17,016 in everything except for the Cross Street Bridge Fund, or the Cross Street Bridge Bond, which is going down by $19,703. On 1049, employee benefits.
Do we have an interest payment left to post? Is that what it is, where the actual is down? We have an end-of-year interest payment to post or something?
So on the, which one?
On the, like the, actually a number of them, the actual,
So that is as of 10, are you looking at 1031 numbers?
look at 1032, the interest, 1038, 1040. They're all about half, but the principal is the,
Right, so you're looking at the column G,
Yeah,
which
the
is
actual.
FY18
Yeah.
actual as of October 31st. So we haven't made those other payments yet.
okay, so we do have some.
I mean, that's only a quarter of the year.
Right.
Or a little better than a quarter of the year.
Because our year ends June 30th.
Yeah, the principal is booked already, though, so it's just-
So the big highlight under employee benefits is health insurance and medical insurance reimbursement for deductibles. Health insurance, we're budgeting a 10% increase for FY18 for January 1st, 2018, and projecting another 10% increase for January 1st, 2019, and used our current enrollment to calculate out the increase in that cost.
On the medical insurance reimbursement, we have a zero deductible, do we? Or
No,
reimburse there? We
We reimburse 80% of their deductibles, and they're responsible for 20% of the deductibles. And then the savings in the workers' compensation is shown on 1056 as a result of the board bidding out insurance.
So can we bid out the medical insurance?
Only 3 carriers.
All ears on possible solutions for that. I do have a meeting set up with our health insurance advisor to see what other strategies we could use, different plans, different deductibles, to help lower that cost.
It's just, I'm sorry, it's not sustainable. I mean,
Do we have like a healthy living program or anything like that going on that encourages good health practices, where maybe if we save, we could share in the savings?
So when the league used to broker our insurance, our health insurance, they had a robust program of wellness, and now they don't do that anymore because most municipalities are with the health exchange or Green Mountain Connect. So they don't provide that service anymore because they're not experiencing they're not getting any commissions from the sale of insurance. Okay. That's that. Overall, we're looking, with all of the changes made with the library's last-minute changes, all of the submissions to date, we're looking at about a 1.5 cent increase in the tax rate, which is about $113,000 to cut. Happy to answer any general questions you have. Or
I guess I'm still absorbing it, and I know that we always do come up with some cuts. So hopefully we can
we're
get
still
there.
working to scrutinize the budgets, every single line item. So if you have any thoughts, see anything, let me know.
Yeah.
As far as budget surplus from this current year, what are you projecting for this current year?
For FY,
Something,
18.
anything to carry over?
we did have a budget surplus in FY '17, and we're having good results so far this year, early in the year, with the highway being the biggest determinant of where we end up at year end.
Yeah.
Right, right. What's our deadline to make decisions on that?
So what you're going to be looking at are Public Works, Public Safety, and Recreation next week. And then your next step is to have the budget public meeting, and it would be good to have that at your January 9th meeting. So you would have time to make any budget adjustments based on what you get for public feedback for your final meeting before the budget warning has to be signed on January 23rd.
23rd, okay.
Does the library have a chance to go through the personnel committee before then? Okay.
Questions, thoughts, comments?
Nothing right now.
Okay.
And for most of these budgets, there's backup information in the FY19 budget packet. So take a look at that.
And most everything in our packet, it was pretty thorough packet. No wonder you and Chris were here till midnight.
Yeah.
Okay.
I really do appreciate the detail this early, Kathleen, and for you pacing us the way you do so that we can have a really informed budget.
Yeah, it's evolved over a number of years, and it's going to continue to evolve, so we'll get there.
But it's been smooth, the last couple of years have been very smooth, and I think it's helped breed success, so thank you.
We've had lots of lively conversations in the capital improvement section, so.
And that will be coming up next week as well.
That'll be fun to present next week.
Okay. Well, then let's go to the Cross Street Bridge Fund local option tax receipts discussion. And I think Kathleen is prepared, I know Kathleen is prepared some information for us.
Okay. So finally, at long last, you have in your packet a summary in a spreadsheet form of what our debt service costs are, what our maintenance requirements are, and what our revenue sources are for the Cross Street Bridge. Looking at where we are right now, we have a $1.3 million surplus in the Cross Street Bridge Fund. The board has been wanting to look at whether it should consider potential other uses of that surplus. And I think this gives you some information to base that discussion on. We're looking at, based on current expenses and known maintenance requirements of the bridge, bringing in at least $280,000 over those maintenance requirements each year. So you could expect the surplus to grow by that much each year, based on all of those assumptions. Mm-hmm. So the board has discussed several potential uses of the fund if it did want to tap those funds, including stabilizing the tax rate, using those funds for either debt service on capital improvements or for capital improvements themselves, economic development potential.
Mm-hmm.
Infrastructure.
Capital improvements.
Yep.
So the original agreement to put that tax in place, is there any stipulation in that that says we can do things one way or another, or did the town have to approve that? And did we?
The board said at the time that it would bring back any change in how those monies are spent to the voters.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that look like? Is that some kind of?
So I think you could go a couple of different ways. One way might be if you wanted to take the money to stabilize the tax rate, you would change your the warning article saying that we want to raise this much money and these are the sources of funding for it. Or you could have an article, a separate article on the town meeting warning saying we'd like to use $200,000 for capital improvements, or this particular capital improvement.
So it's actually a warning, and it would, okay.
A town meeting, yeah.
Well, I know that we did talk about getting input on which direction to go. So how would you see that going?
So I think now that we have this base information, you could include that with your budget public hearing on January 9th.
So just through public hearing, so not surveying then?
Or that could be,
Survey monkey.
I was waiting for that.
or that could be,
It's a hot potato.
that could be a
But-
next step after hearing what input people have on what potential uses are for those funds.
What, I'm sorry, you said?
I know you were distracted by the survey. So perhaps we could develop a survey after we hear what ideas come in
Oh,
on January 9th.
okay, waiting, okay, okay.
I think that the best way to go forward with a survey is to have a couple of solid ideas and not give us all your ideas, because we'd get a lot of ideas.
No, I thought that we narrowed it the last time by just saying, do you want to, A, stabilize the tax rate, B, use it for, capital improvement project, not defining what that is, but, and then I can't remember what the third thing was, but like that, so not give us the
Laura's
capital
referring
improvement.
to the town meeting survey that she did last year.
Well, we attempted that, but then we decided not to ask that question because we weren't ready for that question yet. But we had developed some language, which I can go back and find.
I mean, I think the question is, do we, as a board, want to sort of shape the possibilities, or do we want to get the possibilities from residents and then sort of work with that? And that's two different ways of looking at it, so.
I think we should take a very hard look at what our needs are before we start asking for a lot of suggestions. I mean, that's what we're here for, to assess what our resources are and what our major needs are. And I think once we're satisfied that we've made those judgments, and if we still see that there's a question as to what to do with these funds and how much they may be, when we initially established this fund, which is for 30 years, it was that the select board would use it for paying for the bridge, but also if we should decide on another use, that we would ask the public's approval. And I'm a little, suppose we were to use it. In other words, I think the way to go at it is to consider what are our needs, what do we see our needs that this could ease without having to raise taxes, for example, and then decide that. So, I mean, that's a function of a board.
What it comes down to is we're kind of past due and really should approach a time for a good dialogue among ourselves as to what we think this could be for. I think we all have some ideas, but don't recall we really, as a group, sat around and discussed them. And to have it in a way that is viewed as credible by the public.
I mean, I'm open to all kinds of suggestions, but I do like the idea, having spent so much time on the budget so far, of a mixture for myself of reducing some taxes, but bringing some projects forward that wouldn't necessarily get done otherwise this year, and, whatever else is in there, I mean, I think it's an interesting problem to have, and also allows for some interesting questions too, of like, what are our priorities? And we all have different committees that we're on, and we all have different things that we focus on. So I can imagine they're varied, but I can imagine throwing that out to the community, it's quite varied as well. So it's kind of exciting to hear what other people in the community would want to spend it on, but I'm also sort of protective of the fact of what the needs are, and that most of those committees that we're on already probably have a better sense of need and priority too. So for me, I'm just not sure where to start. Like, I've been waiting so long to start.
So, building on that, do you think it would be good to reach out to the subcommittees and solicit input on potential needs or
I think that would be
identified
a
needs?
great way to go. Yeah, and from, usually they have staff attached to them that would be looking at that as well. I think that would be a great place.
That can't hurt. My inclination for a long time on this personally has been to use it for hard, tangible items. The bridge is a hard, tangible item, and we have infrastructure needs that are hard, tangible items.
Yeah.
Much more than,
tempted to.
as much as a tax stabilization sounds good. I think this represents a chance to take care of things that we need to do
Definitely.
without kicking and deferred maintenance or further degrading our public inventory. I mean, ended up getting into a position, because it was deferred for a long time, of being in a position where we had to spend a lot of money on our buildings. We now have very good buildings, but we were forced into that because they deteriorated, and I don't want to continue seeing that with, the things that serve us all well on hard items. So that's going to be, right, at least at this point, my inclination to do that.
Well, I like the idea of the bridge being infrastructure, and then if we're gonna use some of those money to have it be something of equal value and in the same category, that it makes sense to then say, okay, well, we're not using it here right now, we can use it here in a similar sort of project. So I like that similarity.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think, when I'm always happy when we can use money to lower taxes, but I think my own concern would be if we were to do that and then have to raise them again. I mean, it seems to me that that this is money that's been set aside for sort of major, as Nick says, tangible expenses, and we, as a board, and our committees have been thinking about these things for some time, and so I think that that would be the place to start, to consider how.
For one example is the issue that's been discussed of is granite curbing, which in the downtown area, to finish off that part, which the bridge project won't take care of. And that creates a durable, long-term product, so that generations down the road, they're not going to be faced with the need to do a crisis replacement or have the expense at that time. So it just seems to be wise to me to look at what these items are.
I'd like to,
Well,
Yeah.
that's,
It's already there.
I think you'd have to look at what we have deferred.
Right.
And balance that against the value of, we have a lot of people who do scream about taxes, and if we've bonded to do a tremendous amount of work on our roads. We've just built a new police, fire, town offices, town rec. I'm not sure how much significant stuff is truly deferred, other than we have a major issue with our water, but that's not the type of thing that I would necessarily say this fund is driven for. That's towards the water users more.
Right.
And so I think we need to do a little bit more brainstorming, and maybe come back from, it comes, if you're talking about infrastructure investment, it comes through your committee, and if your committee could give us an idea, is there stuff that's going to, that we should be looking at, is deferred? There's no doubt we all have a long wish list, and I know that you started with a long wish list, but, is there something that this would, if it's a sizable piece, that we could go to the voters and say, if we bonded, that this would service the debt on that bond, and we could actually get a project done. And maybe by doing it that way, you could also use some of the funds. So we're talking $280,000 to $436,000 per year excess that could also potentially be, well, it's servicing that bond debt because interest rates are very low. It could also maybe be helping to stabilize taxes. So I don't think it's an either-or decision. I think we need to really lay that out and see what are the options and what are we got to have some tangible projects that we're weighing. Because if it's, the granite curbing is a great idea, a great point, because we don't want to, have a beautiful downtown and then have these little patches of sidewalk that are deteriorated and everything. But if that's already in the budget, what is deferred that we
Right.
are kicking down the road?
I like what you said, Brian, and thought the biggest thing that I thought of was using the money to leverage additional funds so that we're not just spending cash. that we're leveraging that money to accomplish more, especially if we felt that the fund was gonna be self-sustained, you know, that money was repeating, so that we could get more, you know, if you spend $200,000 a year, or you leverage 200,000 to get $1 million, you can get more
Right.
done, you know, so. Yeah.
Essentially for bonding, really, yeah.
Yeah.
Process then, and maybe we would have the, do you have another meeting that you could?
We have a meeting coming up
Thursday.
on
Friday.
Thursday.
Friday.
Thursday?
Friday?
Is it Friday?
Friday?
Is it Friday? Yes, we have a meeting
It's
on
Friday,
Friday.
right? We changed it.
Oh, man. Yeah. I would have been here Thursday morning. Good thing I came here.
Is it reasonable to ask if?
I'm
Dan
not sure if we'd be
Bill-
ready then, or if we'd have to, you tell me. I mean, I'm not sure. I
I'm
mean,
not saying necessarily a final list. I
Yeah,
mean, that's asking a little much, but could you give us an idea of,
I-
you must have projects that you say you've
Yeah,
deferred.
yes.
Can you give us some tangible
So,
projects to
yeah.
talk
How
about?
how about decommissioning the wastewater treatment plant?
Yeah.
So we could maybe find a use for that space, so it would be valuable to the town.
Yeah.
I think about the South Street project that came in,
Yeah.
way over what we had anticipated, and
We have,
we didn't get, you know, we've been piecemealing that work.
we've got a lot of priority lists that we can look at, so,
So,
All right.
yes.
It'd
I didn't
be
mean to
nice
sound,
yeah.
no, I'm just caught up on the fact that I'm a day off and what I'm
I
trying to
think
get
if we're
done
going to
this week.
have, if we're going to have, ask the voters to maybe weigh in, we ought to give them some ideas of what that might look like.
And I think there are a lot of projects that we've, I mean, we started off, what was it, 3-point-something million in capital improvements and shaved that down to 1-point-something. So yes.
Your phone call to me scared me.
I was like, dude, we've got, just so
Yeah.
you know, we're starting at 3.4.
Yeah. I got that phone call and I
You're like,
said,
"Ugh."
okay, this isn't going to be a fun budget cycle.
But that's the thing, and so I think we have committed to a bunch of projects that we could, as you said, then leverage and commit for far longer. Yes, absolutely, yes.
Okay.
I think it'll be a wild discussion, narrowing it down to what everybody wants, but yes, we can do that.
you know, just a little different perspective on the tax stabilization is using that money to fund increases in the capital budget, does help stabilize the tax rate.
I know, I was
But
going to
it-
say that.
But it doesn't actually, you know, cover like, what I don't wanna see that money used for is employee benefits. You know,
It's
like,
what?
employee benefits, you know,
Oh.
like I wanna see it go, like Nick said, into tangible stuff, but that's what the capital budget is, so if it covers the increase in the capital budget plus some additional projects,
That's-
not just into the general fund.
I mean, if you look at our capital improvement budget on here, it's the last page, that's where I'm coming from. I'm hesitating on specific projects. I would say to have that cover the increase in the capital improvement plan would be a wonderful way to go. It's, what is it, $183,000? So I hesitate to say this project and this project and this project are, what I would be thinking of
Yeah.
is to cover that. And so that would offset, that would do different things, you know, whether we'd want all of that to go to it, but even a portion of that would make a big difference in the tax rate and the capital improvement budget.
Okay.
Thank you.
So maybe we can all brainstorm a little bit, how, and when we meet a week from now, we can put together how we would bring this to, for the public hearing.
Yeah.
And get that input, that then we would take to town meeting after some more discussion.
And I gotta change
Well,
my calendar.
I
We would simply ask the town if we can use the surplus for these purposes, right? Would that,
We have to do that at town meeting.
at town meeting,
Right.
yes,
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 But
exactly.
we have to, my
have to
thought is that we bring a proposal to them,
Right,
that,
Right.
that the select board has
no, Right.
done some hard thinking and looked at some numbers on.
Right.
And so that the town, we're not doing a survey monkey and wrestling with 50
Right.
ideas.
Right.
right, no, I think that's the,
The problem is, I don't think that we're that we have the time to put together a proposal for doing a specific project.
Well, and that's where Susan came up with, that you would give it to,
I mean, maybe that
Capital.
could be a goal for next year.
For next year.
Is
if we use less now,
like using some of that money to
Yeah.
fund a bond for a specific project, like having that proposal together for town meeting, I see as kind of a tall
Yeah.
order.
no, I'm with
But
you.
I think it's a good thing to work on in the future, and also gives us a precedent of having delegated some funds for it, and sort of having a framework for where you want that money to go and why.
So.
I'm not looking to spend all the surplus right now.
Right.
I'm thinking if we can start with an idea and get a sense for where the voters stand on how we handle this surplus, and if they are okay with that, then that gives us, I think, it doesn't give us carte blanche license, but it gives us the go-ahead that maybe we should be talking about some of these things and pursuing what it would, what would a bond look like, and how would it maybe save us money in the
I
long run.
like the idea of that, and gives us the entire year to talk about it.
Right.
What does $200,000 get us in bond money? Roughly,
3 million,
3 million?
yeah.
Okay,
under 3 million, but, yeah.
I could get some projects done with that.
It was about 70,000 for $1 million, is that
Yeah.
about, yeah?
And see, that's the
So-
thing. It's
Yeah,
like,
but that.
what could you do?
But that requires some planning
It
that we
re-
haven't done.
Yeah,
so.
that's not gonna happen between now and March.
But that's only, assuming like 200,000 would get you 3 million to put towards a project or projects, and that's only using the anticipated surplus annually, that still is leaving a large chunk that we've already built up.
Well, plus the surplus annual is 280 to 4 plus.
Right,
And so it's not even using all of your.
right.
I should think that we should
And I don't
consult
think we should plan on it.
Dan in this, because I think there's a person who really is on top of all of, I think if anyone who has the global view of these, it would be Dan. And I think to a certain extent, these deliberations should really begin with the staff who are,
That's what we're asking for, is for them,
Right.
for them, they're
Yeah.
meeting Friday and
Yeah.
come out of that committee.
And
Other
we've had extensive
recommendation.
meetings talking, just whittling down that capital improvement budget and why and the wheres and all of that. And really, the capital improvement budget that we're gonna be presenting is whittled down about as much as it can be. So I think it'll be good, and what a nice thing to bring back to the committee. Thank you.
Okay, so if there's, no one else has anything that, so we'll be looking for something coming out of committee with some ideas and input. Next is signature of Vermont gas easements. We had a 30-day statutory waiting period for those petitions that were reconsidered at the November 7th town vote. That, in the end, authorized the select board to approve the Vermont gas easements. At this time, I'm looking for some motions. If somebody would like to
Sure.
make them, I'd appreciate it.
I'll make a motion to authorize Town Manager Kathleen Ramsey to sign the deed of easement granting Vermont Gas Systems an easement on town-owned property at 77 Main Street.
second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Abstain.
Those opposed, okay, and what,
Sec-
next.
Second one is to authorize Town Manager Kathleen Ramsey to sign the deed of easement granting Vermont Gas Systems an easement on town-owned property designated as 0 Bakery Lane.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those
Abstain.
opposed? We have one abstention.
Okay, and the third one is to authorize Town Manager Kathleen Ramsey to sign the deed of easement granting Vermont Gas Systems an easement on town-owned property designated as 0 Mill Street,
Second.
which is also the Mill Street parking lot.
Oh, sorry, second.
Moved and
Very
seconded.
excited.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those
Abstain.
opposed? One abstention. Okay. So we had a lunch with the college today. I think the agenda was in our board packet, and basically it was an update. Wasn't, it was a sharing of ideas, and there's our agenda. So on the broadband, I think everybody knows that Susan and Chris English have met with the college, along with Brian Alexander, and they're exploring other alternatives to having the complete build-out of broadband to every home in the school district, and which I think some of the ideas that they're exploring may be something that we could actually create a business model that's doable. We're excited about this, and as is the college supportive of it. We talked about Fusilli Fields, and there is a committee working to come up with a shared use agreement that would take the college out of having to manage the fields, and maybe a long-term agreement. We're still a ways away from having a long-term agreement with the college on whether they would potentially gift that to the town or the school.
Why?
But we're working, the college hasn't used it for a long time. It's, the town is, the
No, why
schools.
wouldn't they gift it to us? No.
Oh, I'm not saying they wouldn't, but we want to make sure that they're not in an awkward position of the town and the schools fighting over
Okay.
use. And so we're trying to set the stage for a very smooth transition that the college can feel good about, that everybody's happy is really what we're trying to
Okay.
create. And that's why the shared use agreement. Cross Street Bridge, local option tax, just shared with them that we were going to be having these discussions because they shared in the Cross Street Bridge expense, and so that they knew that we are going to be talking about utilizing some of those extra funds. The Business Development Fund shared, we still have a balance, about $100,000 in the Business Development Fund. The college is working on creating more makerspace type of possibilities. There was in our packet some information that came, I believe, out of that came from ACEDC. And it does appear like there's some experts in the field. They're saying in rural development's different than it used to be, and it's really about providing opportunities for entrepreneurism. And so the makerspace is maybe an area that we could be talking about how maybe we can be a bigger player and get our business development going. We did talk about bringing something back to the voters at this next town meeting on what we would be doing with the Business Development Fund. I think, our hopes of getting a committee that would provide advice, as we haven't had anybody come out forward and offer to serve on that committee. So I do think we need, once we get through the budget, I think we need to talk a little bit about that. Update on Exchange Street. Susan shared with the college the plan that the board has approved to solicit grant funding, do a full hydraulic study, and then prioritize repair, build out, new build out, whatever is necessary, but really to do a complete master plan. Talked a little bit about the budget, gave them an update, and then, everybody's interested in bridge replacement, and the question was, with all the stuff that's going on, as far as the letters in the paper, does that change? Are we gonna be, and we reiterated what Susan said this evening, and what I think what the general board consensus is that there's been no change as far as the board's position at this point. We have not received any change in guidance, and so we're continuing to move forward and support the plan that we know as it is stated at this time. So, last thing, there was some discussion a little bit about the continuing work that different groups are doing within the town. Some of the fallout from the Murray incident, and the interfaith groups, and just all the good work that some of these groups are doing to ensure that all of our residents feel accepted, feel as important members of our community, and have resources for support and assistance. And so it was good subjects. There was nothing major. That's the end of my report.
Just make one comment?
Yes.
So when we did the Economic Health Task Force, we did make a recommendation on where to use that additional money. So, and it didn't include a makerspace, it included putting that money into a revolving loan fund. That I think a makerspace could certainly apply for that, funds within that. So I just wanted to remind you that.
Thank you.
We had made recommendations for what to do with that money, so.
I've been focused on the recommendation to get our committee going.
Yeah, but there were other
But
recommendations.
there were, yeah.
In there, and I
Yeah.
think also, if we decided to move forward on, having a, maybe putting some of that money into the Better Middlebury Partners page, if that, or the,
BMP,
Yeah,
yeah.
you know what I'm talking about. So that we're utilizing that web service as a place for businesses to find the information they need when they want to get started.
Yeah.
And I don't know, after talking with Kathleen about that, the separation between a town government page and information for business and how that works and how it looks like, I don't know. But utilizing some of that money so that new businesses can get the information they need or get pointed in the right direction would also be good use. So.
Yeah. You had some good recommendations, a lot of work, and we haven't finalized our revolving loan fund process,
No, and part of what we were gonna do with that task force that looked at the,
the Aquavit.
thing was to work on the revolving loan.
Yep.
And I am maxed out, so I'm trying to
Understand.
fit it in.
It's the holiday season to boot, so.
Yeah.
I don't want to be too much of a driver. We may not be quite prepared. We've got some other things on our plate, and so if we're not prepared, we'll ask for one more year as we continue to grapple with this. So.
It was just news to me about the makerspace and where that
That's a
money.
That's a college function.
Mhm.
They're talking.
Right,
They
but
were
you were
telling-
talking about that extra money and,
No, I said, yeah.
I'm sorry, I
Said
misunderstood.
it
I
may,
thought
that
maybe
might
you
be,
were-
I said that might be something we would want to play in.
Mhm.
No, I'm not committed. It's not my checkbook to commit, but.
Right.
Approval of check warrants.
I've reviewed the checks, they're in good order, so I move that we approve the total expenditures of $4,243,316.94, consisting of accounts payable in the amount of $4,443,316.94, $75,613.41, and the rest in payroll. And a lot of that, as you know, was paying our school district portion of the expenditures and our benefits. And we mentioned electric, so a big chunk goes for that too. So it'll be good for us to continue to offset that however we can. Like 16,000 in this pay period went to electric, to give you a sense of that.
I'll second. Thank you. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Kathleen?
Okay, just a quick reminder that the Grow Solar site visit is on Thursday at noon at the we're going to meet at the intersection of Halliday Road and Middle Road South. So if anybody wants to carpool or meet down there, let me know.
Does the Energy Committee know about that?
I can make them aware of it.
Do you know if Jen has been able to put the right-of-way road over in the mapping at all?
Dan is working with Lincoln Landy from Grow Solar to get access to their maps and put
Put that on there? Okay,
the
great.
footprint on there. Okay, and then, as Brian noted, the Addis County Economic Development Profile and Survey is available online and in your packet.
Okay. Thank you. Board member concerns. Nick?
Not a concern, just a thanks to all who were involved in was Thursday's downtown event. That was fantastic to see the life, the dynamic in downtown, just the good sharing of time with friends and neighbors, and it was a wonderful event, so thank you. I wish we could do that many times per year, and maybe one day we'll have, as we work forward on what we do with our town center, and maybe we'll see that kind of dynamic all the time. Fantastic work.
Thank you, Nick. Victor? Heather?
One thing I've been thinking about a little bit is the length of the meetings we have and the amount of work in the amount of reading in the packet, and just wondering, I don't want to ask more of staff, but wonder what it would look like to meet more often for less time and less topics, and just wanted to throw it out there as a thought. So what if we met 3 times a month? And
At what?
What if we met 3 times a month for a shorter amount of time and less items in the packet? Is the work to create that, is it the same, would it be more? You know what I mean, like,
I'll have to think about it.
okay. I don't wanna suggest something that, maybe it makes sense to just have long meetings twice a month, but I'm just trying to, it's just a lot.
This was a budget meeting. Usually I've been trying, we had a couple where I blew the 9 o'clock curfew, but
I remember some.
the days of
going to
11 o'clock.
Well, the other thing that happens is
I remember the
feel-
11 o'clock ones. Yeah, these are great.
I just feel also like there's so much stuff in the packet sometimes too that we don't even get a chance to talk about, so.
Yeah. Well, and that's why we used to go to 11, because we would talk about it all, and
I doubt dividing it, say, in thirds rather than halves is going to make an appreciable difference. My guess is that you'll just have 3 meetings about as long as, in other words, 3 meetings that will run till about 9 o'clock or something like that. And there is something about, the second and fourth Tuesdays. We've been doing that it's a regular time. I would think that it would take a lot of persuading from me at any rate to make a fundamental change in our meeting patterns.
I get what she's saying, though, just trying to get my work done and break it up and to read things, and And I always feel bad, like Monday morning, I call Kathleen, I'm like, something didn't make sense, can you help me with that? And then, so she's trying to help with that. It's hard sometimes, and especially, I think I just feel at this time of year. But at the same time, I could also see that if we meet 3 times, I'm gonna use up all that time. So, would totally do that. I don't know.
Oh, Heather, you had also mentioned at one point meeting earlier as a potential thing, maybe give that some thought. I believe for Jen's, whatever's not done at 9 o'clock is not done. and they put it off to the next meeting.
And, well, I'm also thinking too, just about the quantity of reading that I'm trying to get in for each meeting. And a lot of times, some of this stuff is getting updated Monday, Tuesday morning. So, I just thinking about it.
It's always good
I
to
don't
look
wanna- I don't
at our
wanna-
process and make sure that we are not,
Yeah.
that we have the best process. And so
Yeah.
I appreciate your
And
question.
I really don't want to ask staff more of staff. I'm just brainstorming.
Is a different way doable? Yeah, it's a good question. I don't
Susan?
have anything.
Laura, I know you have something.
No, I don't want to even say anything after that, I just want, no, I mean, the library was wonderful tonight, they had a craft night, that's what this paraphernalia is here, so I was there also on behalf of the Energy Committee, because I had offered to help with the button-up project, and we were giving out the light bulbs, which I brought tonight so that you could see that we've had display at Midnight Stroll, we've been in Mary Hogan's school with 3rd and 4th graders, and we were in the library tonight giving out these free LED bulbs. If you pledge to take energy action, and it could be installing that light in a place where the light is on the most, that's really where you're going to get the most benefit of that. Nice thing about LEDs is that they're plastic, so you don't have to worry about breaking them the way you do incandescent lights, and they don't have mercury, which are in CFL, so it's a nice product, so we're teaching that. Lighting is just one thing, but really you want to be encouraging, and we're trying to teach our 3rd and 4th graders that we want to be buttoning up our houses, and that's air sealing, so like shades and these little foam insulators for your outlets on your outside walls can help seal drafts. So we're teaching that, and we're grateful to the Energy Committee for putting the project together. And you can still get, this is the important thing, if you want a light bulb, you can get one from the library. So they have what you need, so you just have to check in at the circulation desk, and they'll connect you as long as you pledge to save some energy.
Thank you, Laura.
I'm
Go ahead.
I'm good.
You good? Okay. Well, I just want to thank, the BMP put a lot of work into the Midnight Stroll. We know those functions are really staff intensive. I know that we have a lot of volunteers, especially on the town staff. I always see Kathleen volunteering at everything. But it just, when they go through that effort, and you see everybody downtown with smiles and enjoying the downtown, it was like a Hallmark Christmas movie down there, and so it is appreciated by, I think, the town at large, and so it's nice to live in a town like this. I'd like to go into executive session and so that we can close our meeting.
You would?
I would. Can
Oh my
you take
gosh.
us there?
Okay. In accordance with Vermont's open meeting law requirements, I move that the board find that premature general knowledge of the consideration of a contract negotiation and personnel matter would clearly place the select board at a substantial disadvantage, because the select board risks disclosing its negotiating strategy if it discusses the contract negotiation and personnel matter in public.
Second.
Sorry.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay.
I further move that the board enter into executive session to discuss a contract negotiation and personnel matter under provisions of Title I, Section 313A1 of the Vermont statutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Go into executive session at 9:19.